Chapter 13. Thomas Peters had outdone himself this time. Recreating a faithful reproduction of such a rare and precious instrument was not just a job for him, it was a love affair. The passion that drove him was something only another luthier could understand. For almost a week he had labored over the recreation of an instrument that needed to look exactly like the cello Robert Duncan had brought to life in his 1736 workshop. And not just because Thomas had been hired to do this. It was more about honoring the ancient craft and the original craftsman. Miss Stuart had let him photograph every detail of the Duncans' ancient instrument. He got the photos printed as a large full-color matte prints which he taped onto the walls of his workshop. No detail of the Duncan cello was too small to escape inspection. The thick canted neck, attached with a rectangular-headed nail, had been a challenge. He had discarded a few attempts before he was satisfied that he had created an exact duplicate. He carefully matched the color of the nail with a dab of stain mixed with some rusty shavings. The fingerboard, which reached about halfway to the cello's upper corners, was surprisingly easy to build. The wood seemed to understand his intentions as it yielded to his skilled hands. But the problem became the two decorative white lines scratched around the edges. For hours he studied the photos, peering through the jeweler's loop he kept around his neck. As he studied the detail, Thomas marveled at Duncan's workmanship. The cello's one-piece back was a completely different challenge, covered with intricate ink perfing, also applied on the belly. He tried over and over without much luck to recreate the effect, getting more frustrated with each attempt. Late into the night, he finally left it to work on the tailpiece. Its unusual trapezoidal shape curved in slightly and was attached to the spikeless end button by a wire gut. Thomas finally went back and finished the perfing using a stencil he created to guide him. It worked well, after he practiced applying it to some scrap wood. He stood back and shook his head in satisfaction after 3 hours of detailed precision painting. Perfection! As he applied the colored varnishes, after much experimentation and tightened strings around the pegs, he admired what he had created. Not having to worry about the tone and timbre of the cello had let him focus solely on the look. His array of electronic toys for measuring every aspect of vibration, frequency, volume, tonal range, and a dozen other aural elements had not been needed. This was a stunt double cello that belonged in Hollywood, not Carnegie Hall. As he packed it carefully for the short drive to the National Gallery, he smiled thinking about how Miss Stuart would react when she saw what he had created. Somehow, getting her approval was worth just as much as his $5,000 fee. Adina felt giddy as she walked through the exhibit hall. The clone of the Duncan cello had turned out even better than she had expected. It was almost unreal. After Thomas had delivered it to her office yesterday, they compared the original to the copy, examining them side by side. She marveling at the precision of Thomas's work, he smiling and pointing out intricate details she had never noticed before. Michael, her boyfriend from gallery security, had brought the real Duncan cello up to her office one last time, before it was due to go on display that day. "When you're done with it, Adina, I need to take it downstairs. They're setting it up this afternoon for the new exhibit," he explained after he delivered it to her. Michael was a sweet kid, she thought. He had stood staring at her in the doorway, and she finally gave him a hug and a heartfelt peck on the cheek. "Thank you, Michael," she told him. His mouth dropped a bit before he finally turned and left, a huge grin covering his young face. Now, as she carried 2 large banker's boxes of research files about the exhibit, Adina knew the moment of truth was at hand. When Michael had returned to her office to pick up the Duncan cello, she had substituted Thomas Peters's lovingly crafted copy for the real instrument, which she had discreetly placed in her own empty cello case. Michael unknowingly delivered the replica to the exhibit. Now he stood by the instrument, in its padded case, as if some masked cello thief might suddenly appear from behind the imitation castle walls to snatch it. He scrutinized the assortment of gallery staff to see who might pose the biggest threat to the precious cargo he guarded. As Adina set down her banker's boxes, she felt a tinge of nerves at what she was doing. She saw Tara strolling up the outer walkway approaching the exhibit entrance. "Showtime," Adina thought, trying to project a calm exterior. "Dee, everything looks fantastic!" Tara beamed as she strode in with her assistant Pablo. "I love the changes you made with the candles and the women's outfits." "Thanks, Tara," Adina smiled. "I wanted it as authentic as possible." "I think you've succeeded," Tara said, looking at the paintings, the placards, and the new scene around the podium that would hold the centerpiece of the show, the Duncan cello. Adina had the idea to set up a group of mannequin musicians, both male and female, who looked as if they were getting set to perform. The idea was to highlight the cello and recreate a setting where it would be used in performance. She dressed 2 female musicians in black velvet blouses trimmed with gold lining and puffy elbow accents. Both wore white roses, the symbol of the Jacobite rebellion. One of the female mannequins held a cittern. The other was positioned as if she was looking up at the Duncan cello, literally reaching for it. The men were dressed in the same fashion as those she had performed with at Kinnaird, wearing full flowing coats and white lacy shirts. They held the same instruments that Adina had seen them use, viola and violin. "Well, let's get our star out and I'll take some pictures. We're posting these online and Pablo's going to tweet them out," Tara said after she adjusted one of the mannequins ever so slightly. "Mike, would you get the Duncan cello, please?" Michael grinned at the request. He carefully opened the case, reverently lifting it up and bringing it forward. Adina flinched as Michael carried the impostor towards Tara, who looked it over carefully. "It's such a beautiful instrument," Tara said. "Amazing that it's over 270 years old. It's in such good shape, too. It looks like it was made last week." Adina held her breath. Tara touched the cello, feeling the smooth, varnished features. She gingerly touched one of the strings. "This is what they're all coming to see." Michael handed the cello to the waiting technician. He took it and looped a nylon cord around the neck. It would be used to suspend it above the podium, designed to look like a section of the castle wall. The thin black wire would be invisible as it held the cello in mid-air, so that visitors to the exhibit could walk around the instrument, examining it from all angles. "I think this is going to work," Adina said as the 2 women watched the cello raised into place. When finally set up and the spotlights focused on it, the effect was stunning. "Whoa," Tara whispered. "Perfect. Visitors can walk right around the whole setup, as if they were one of the musicians about to perform. Nice work." Adina nodded her head. Thomas had created a replica that somehow looked more authentic than the real instrument. Tara stood staring at the display. She reached for her phone to take a picture, but she was too close. She took a few steps back, but was still too close. She took a few more steps, and then knocked over both of the banker's boxes stuffed with Adina's papers and notes. "Oh, shoot! Sorry, Dee!" Tara exclaimed, almost falling over herself. The boxes lay on the floor with their contents spread all around. Photos, papers, colored index cards, files, and assorted scraps of paper. "Those are your notes for the exhibit." "Yeah," Adina responded. She bent over and started gathering the papers. Tara bent down too. "Here, let me help you." She grabbed some of the index cards and notes and then picked up an invoice. It was from Thomas Peters Luthier. She stood up, reading it, and looked at Adina curiously. $5,000 for professional luthier services?" she asked. "What's a luthier? I should know that, but remind me." Damn! Adina froze. Had she gone too far this time, even for Tara to keep her out of jail? "Luthier! They fix and build stringed instruments," Adina said, fumbling for an explanation. She looked at the mannequins and then back to Tara, still holding the invoice. "Thomas had instruments that I wanted to use, things he could adapt to be historically accurate." Tara looked at the mannequins, each with a different stringed instrument. "Oh, you mean for the display?" Yes, exactly. He makes copies of old instruments. He made the cittern that woman's holding," Adina said, pointing to the mannequin with the pear-shaped guitar. Tara looked at the invoice again. This stuff doesn't come cheap, does it?" She handed it to Adina and walked towards the mannequin holding the cittern. "It's a good thing you found someone who could make such authentic-looking pieces. I thought for sure they were real." Adina smiled weakly as Tara turned her gaze to the fake Duncan cello and studied it carefully. Adina's blood pounded in her ears. It was deafening. She might need to shout to make herself heard. "Tara, now that the exhibit's ready, I'm going to take some time off," she called out, hoping no one would notice the thumping inside her chest. Tara turned towards her, took one last look at the suspended cello, and walked towards Adina. "Yeah, I figured that was coming. You do have another job now. Another job? The NAC Orchestra, duh! You know that little gig you landed? Tara smiled. Adina felt a sudden release of tension. Oh yeah, that job. You've started rehearsals, I guess. Yes, we had the first one 2 days ago. How'd it go? Adina looked at Tara, her childhood soulmate and still her closest friend. Why couldn't she just tell her what was happening? Get advice from her, the kind she always gave whenever there was some crisis in Adina's life. But this was different. Tara would be about as much help as Philip. Tara was still waiting for a response. Oh, yeah, well, it was pretty good, Adina finally managed. Pretty good, that's it, Tara laughed. Dee, this is your chance, girl, don't blow it. You need to put your heart and soul and everything else you might have into this. You need to nail it, completely. Otherwise you'll end up with me as your wicked boss until you're an old lady. Adina smiled, the Tara pep talk. Get it done, get off your ass, work hard, focus. You're right, Tara, I wouldn't want that and neither would you, Adina laughed. You know what? I'm going up to the lake for a while, stay at my parents' place so I can really focus on the music and my technique. You're right, I need to nail this. Tara leaned in and gave her a hug. Do it, Dee. You are now a cellist with the National Arts Center Symphony Orchestra. Make your dream a reality. Philip knew a thing or two about the ingredients of a good front-page story. Greed, deceit, lust, revenge. When committed by a public figure, the deadly sins were irresistible to readers. I got something, he offered at the weekly story meeting, which included most of the Ottawa Citizen's editors and senior reporters. You know Friedrich Lang, the NAC conductor and music director, he began. Well, he is beginning rehearsals this week for a new work that he claims he composed himself. The arts and entertainment editor, Peter Smithson, looked up from his laptop. Oh yeah, we just got a release on that from the NAC. He clicked a few times on his trackpad. Here it is, Voyages of Destiny. A new work by Friedrich Lang. World premiere December 9th, Southern Hall, Ottawa. Lang didn't write a single note of it, Philip said. The music was composed in the 18th century. My girlfriend's a cellist with the orchestra. Her grandmother found the score in a castle in Scotland and sent it to her. Lang stole it, note for note, and if she says anything, she'll get fired. All eyes turned towards Philip. This sounded like it had a bit of everything. Peter Smithson, entertainment editor, sensed the interest and saw an opportunity for an art story to get onto the front page for an extended run. Will she talk about it? On the record? Smithson asked, peering over his glasses from behind his laptop. Philip hesitated. No, probably not. Okay, well, it sounds like a great piece, the arts editor said, looking back to his laptop. Keep an eye on it, and let us know if you get something we can use. The short drive from Mum's cottage to the Angus Archives just outside the county town of Forfar had given William and Jackie a much-needed change of scenery after their days of being cooped up in Mum's little seaside dwelling. The archive housed historical records for all the tiny burghs of the county known for centuries as Forarshire, but now referred to as Angus, familiar around the world for its prized black cattle. After reading about the letters, photographs, and military records, death warrants, journals, and old census documents housed in the Angus archive, William knew he had to make a visit. With a little luck, it might help him make sense of the puzzle pieces that his daughter, mother, and grandmother had thrown his way. Pieces that so far didn't add up. He turned over the clues in his head as he and Jackie made their way through the Scottish countryside in companionable silence. They were content to simply admire the scenery and enjoy the serenity. The wide open pastures shimmered a verdant green in the early September mist. The changing colors of autumn leaves, the deep reds and brilliant oranges of the century-old trees lining the rural roads, framed the wide open pastures to pastoral perfection. They slowed down as they approached an imposing structure. You see that? William asked, pointing to the impressive landmark beside them. Jackie looked across the open pasture at the square stone tower. The ancient-looking three-story structure was topped with an octagonal spire visible for miles in all directions. Yeah, neat. What is it? She asked. Restenneth, he answered. The history professor in him had been dying for an audience. Probably built by the Picts and converted in the 12th century to an Augustinian priory. William stopped the car by the side of the road so they could get a better look. It's mostly just a stone shell now, he continued, and then paused somewhat dramatically. But it is the last resting place of Prince John. Jackie strained her head around to see more of the structure. He had her hooked now. "Oh, Professor, who was Prince John?" she sang out in a mocking tone, as if she was a starry-eyed first-year student in one of her husband's medieval history classes. His lectures were not just full of facts. William made every effort to weave mystery and suspense into everything he taught. He wanted to inspire his students to be detectives. His aim was to capture the hearts as well as imaginations. "I thought you'd never ask. Prince John was one of only 2 of Robert the Bruce's legitimate sons," William began. "Unfortunately, John, beloved as he was by his father, maybe the greatest Scottish king of them all, died as an infant. But his twin brother David succeeded his dad and became King of the Scots when he was only 5, 1329, I believe." Jackie whistled. "I'm not sure what's more impressive, the history lesson or the fact that you remember all this." "I just read about this place yesterday when I Googled how to get to the Angus archives," he replied. "I have a thing for dates and for Scottish kings." "You certainly do. Professor Stewart, I have one more question," Jackie said playfully. "How many children did Mr. Robert the Bruce actually sire? Is that the way you say it?" "Yes, we do. Although in Britain, to sire is usually associated more with horses," he responded. "Well, miss, Robert the Bruce was a busy king, but he did find time to sire 11 children, 5 boys and 6 girls. And of the kids, 6 of them were, as they say, bastards from unknown mothers." "I guess he traveled a lot on business," she giggled. "But why did he bury his son John here at—" She paused, trying to remember the first part of the lesson. What was it? "Restenneth. And that's a very good question. Unfortunately, I don't know, but maybe we'll find out in about 2 minutes." He put the car in gear, and they slowly rolled the remaining few yards ahead on the road to the adjacent Hunter Library, home of the Angus Archive. William pulled the car up to the flat-looking entrance of the building. Inside the unassuming structure, forgotten stories of knights, princes, ladies, villains, and plain ordinary folk awaited the discovery by local historians and visitors from around the world that came here to trace their Scottish roots. The archive was housed in a simple 1-story flat-roofed brick structure, trimmed with wooden beams and stained dark brown. Rectangular windows placed just below the roofline provided natural light on most days. Inside the archive, William headed for the search room. He was mindful to turn off his mobile phone, as per the regulations he had read on the archive's website. Jackie lingered at the front desk, talking to the imposing-looking gray-haired woman, apparently the librarian on duty. Jackie wanted to know more about Prince John, buried nearby, and why his father, Robert the Bruce, had chosen Restenneth as his infant son's final resting spot. William was hoping the archive would help him unlock the mystery of Catherine Carnegie. He had been unable to find any reference to her online. There was plenty of information about the captain, Sir James Carnegie, and his brother George, but nothing on their sister Catherine. He glanced at the signs describing the types of resources available in the search room, including parish registers, a collection of gravestone photographs with monumental inscriptions, and online databases such as one dedicated to Angus burial records. Just as he started looking through the gravestone photographs, Jackie appeared with the librarian, an old battleship of a woman wearing thick glasses. She didn't look like she ever had much fun on or off the job, her stern face that would make a junkyard dog whimper. "Your wife says ye search for a local Carnegie lass," the woman said, her friendly tone in sharp contrast to her threatening demeanor. "Yes, that's right," William replied. "She apparently was the sister of Sir James Carnegie of Pitaro. She must have been born around 1720, I think, possibly around Kincardineshire." "Why do you have such an interest in her, if I may be so bold as to ask?" the librarian inquired. "Is she an ancestor? Are ye working on a family history?" William looked at Jackie. They both smiled and nodded their heads, almost in unison. "Yes, it's sort of a family history, I guess. I think this woman might be some kind of distant relation. I know she spent some time at Kinnaird with her 2 brothers," William said. "You're not so famous castle," the librarian said, squinting as she considered the research task at hand. She made some notes and went to check something on a computer terminal under a hand-lettered sign that read Archive Indexes. William got up to follow her, but Jackie stopped him. She pointed to the journal that sat on the desk beside him. "Is that the journal Mum took from Kinnaird?" she whispered. "Yeah, what about it?" Jackie looked around and saw the librarian was completely engrossed on her computer. "You might not want to let her see that," she said quietly, tilting her head in the direction of the librarian sitting at the desk in the corner. Jackie pointed to the journal. "She might wonder how you ended up with it, or think it's part of their collection." William studied the journal lying on the table. She was right. He should probably keep it in his backpack for now. He was about to put it away when Jackie reached for it. "Wait, can I see that entry you read to me the other day?" she asked him as she opened the journal. "What was that date again?" As Jackie flipped through the pages, William tried to recall the entry. He had so many dates in his head. He sifted through his mind like a computer trying to access the right sector of a hard drive. Oh. Yeah, 6 August 1745. Jackie turned the pages, keeping her back turned to the librarian. "Here it is. Oh, yeah. Oh, my," she said quietly to herself. She started reading and turned a page, completely engrossed. "Oh, uh-oh." She kept reading and turned a few more pages. After she finished, she looked up at William. Her smile was gone. "You better read this. 9 September. William put on his reading glasses. He glanced over at his wife. "Read," she said to him. 9 September 1745. My suspicions have all been confirmed. As I made final preparations to join the Duke of Cumberland in the Highlands, I was infuriated with news that the rapturous knave from Perth, the traitor James Drummond, had returned seeking counsel with George and Catherine. I have delayed attempts to secure my succession to the earldom of Suffolk, the peerage debarred from my cousin through attainder some 30 years hence. Besides his title he lost Kinnaird, all of which should have been rightly passed to me as the eldest surviving Carnegie upon his death in France. His traitorous support for the Jacobites in the 15 cost him everything and casts a long shadow over this family still. And now my own brother plots with Drummond to repeat the same misfortune and continue the plague on the Carnegies. Worse, the overseer at Kinnaird claims he saw Catherine at midday by the stables in conspiracy with Drummond. The overseer watched the two for some time and proposed to me that Catherine has developed affections for the traitor. If Drummond be a suitor for Catherine, I will be ruthless in my resolution against her. An officer from my regiment saw Drummond on the estate as well at about the same time and alerted me, but we were unable to capture him. Even though we fired musket and gave chase, I fear Drummond is trying to enlist both my brother and sister in support of his loathsome pretender prince. I warned Catherine not to associate with Drummond lest she bring more ruin to our family. Insolent as ever, she refused to obey my rule and threatened to do whatever with whomever she pleases. Catherine will know my wrath if she dares associate with Drummond. He is headed for the gallows as surely as my cousin was attainted and died in shame. My sister seems poisoned lately by a spirit of brazen indecency. She admonished me to chill. Her strange manner of late is troubling indeed. I have stationed 2 men from my regiment to keep watch over her, lest the traitor from Perth return. My hope is Catherine will become sensible. If not, she will be detained here at Kinnaird, or in the castle at Edinburgh until Drummond is captured, hung, and dismembered. William closed the journal. Deep in thought, he said nothing as he removed his reading glasses, folded them into his pocket, and slowly laid the journal back on the table. He whispered to Jackie, "Chill?" "Yeah, I saw that," she responded quietly. The librarian, who had been working off in the corner, approached them. "I think I found something that might be of help to you." She held a dark burgundy leather-bound volume. The cover was trimmed with a gold-embossed border. The center was adorned with family coat of arms, also embossed in gold. She handed the volume to William. He put his glasses back on and read the inscription inside the coat of arms. "Dread God." William turned to the librarian, who had indeed found a volume of interest. "I think you may find what you seek in this history," she said. The gray-haired librarian reached over and opened the book to the title page. Jackie, standing close by, looked over William's shoulder so they could both read the page. History of the Carnegies, Earls of Suffolk, and of their Kindred, by William Fraser. "Thank you," William said excitedly. "This is exactly what we need. Can I borrow it?" "No, laddie. That volume and a couple of others you might want to check are almost 150 years old. It's for reference only, and cannot leave the archives," she replied firmly. "But you can use it here as much as you wish." Jackie nodded her head, and William turned to her as the librarian walked away. "You should probably get comfortable, dear," she said, pointing to the desk and chair. "But first you need to do something for me." "Something for you?" William repeated. "Yes. Book me a flight to Ottawa. It's time I went home. I think my daughter needs her mother."